Chapter 263. Zhongzhou is only a small place. Although your father is an overlord there and is loved by the people, if this consort wanted to avenge you, it would only take a single word. However, this consort thinks that this is your Li family's matter. When it comes to revenge, you seem to want to personally destroy them. Li Yingying looked at her without saying a word. Her cool eyes were filled with stubbornness. This was the first time that Shen Yueji had heard Li Yingying talk about her past in detail. At such a young age, she had personally witnessed the death of her family. Her once loving father had become cruel and bloodthirsty. Her own mother's flesh had been sliced off day by day. She had screamed hoarsely. The mother and daughter whom she had once kindly saved had turned into ferocious wild wolves. They were no longer as careful and gentle as they used to be. The ferocious wild wolves revealed their sharp claws and teeth that could devour a small child cleanly. She still had many things that she had not said. She talked about the grievances she had suffered in the residence over the years. She talked about what she had experienced over the years. She only talked about her mother. Based on these few words, it was not difficult to guess that in the years after her mother's death, no matter how obedient, weak or foolish she had been, the torment she had suffered was bound to be no less. A person who could be bullied and humiliated by a servant girl as she pleased. Who would treat her well. I don't want children. Even if I can't be a mother, I don't want children. I only want revenge. For my mother, for the hundreds of innocent lives of the Xia family, for my loved ones. I want to see them dig their own graves with my own eyes. I want them to have a good taste of being separated from their families and having their loved ones tortured and turned into food. I want to live. In the end, everything could not compare to her one sentence. I want to live, no matter how much suffering she had to endure, no matter how much suffering she had to endure. She wanted to live. She wanted revenge. Li Yingying's confession had somewhat surprised Shen Yueji. She did not trust anyone and had always been on guard against Li Yingying. But now, she had spoken of her desire for revenge. She had experienced it firsthand. When a person's heart was filled with hatred, they would be indifferent to everything around them. Previously, she had set her sights on Shen Yueji, probably because she wanted status and power. She didn't know if she would have other thoughts after she got her revenge in the future. At least for now, Shen Yueji knew that before she got her revenge, she didn't care about the so-called fame, wealth, splendor. Her heart is filled with hatred, she is beneficial to her, she will not betray her. She couldn't say for sure what would happen in the future, but there was still a long time before that. No one knew what would happen in the future. She didn't want the Li clan to die so quickly. She wanted to save time to slowly torture them. During this period of time, she enjoyed the pleasure of revenge and carried out her plan as she wished. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, for her, it was enough. Double happiness was left behind to clear the poison in Li Yingying's body. Shen Yueji and Imo Wuxiang returned to Jilan courtyard together. Sitting on the round chair and staring at the handsome man in front of her for a while, Shen Yueji suddenly smiled. Your Highness, are we now considered to be grasshoppers tied to the same rope? The answer was non-committal. Imo Wuxiang only glanced at her and did not answer. Chapter 264. Imo Wuxiang had already expected her to say this. He leaned against the couch and narrowed his dark eyes. If Ji wants to kill someone, I'll give you a knife. Regent, aren't you going to ask who I want to kill? No matter who you want to kill, I'll help you. The smile on her lips deepens. Shen Yueji sits in the man's arms and caresses the man's handsome outline with her smooth little hand. Regent is so comfortable. Aren't you afraid that the first person I want to kill is you? He wrapped her little hand in his palm and slowly placed it on his heart. The man looked at her deeply and his eyes were filled with endless love. My life is G-ers. G-er can take it at any time. Shin Yueji looked away awkwardly when she felt the man's serious gaze. She wanted to get up from his body. The man's large palms restrained her waist, not allowing her to move. Shin Yueji's small hands pressed against the man's chest. These days in the palace, the Gu family's third young master has been in close contact with Gu Yueyin. Gu Mingqi must have been the leader of the plan to assassinate me. However, even they had not expected that Shang Guanyu would appear in the end. Gu Mingqi would definitely not give up so easily since the plan had been foiled. Instead of being remembered by a villain, Shin Yueji's small mouth curved into a sarcastic smile. Why don't we return this gift intact? Gu Yueyin, since you want to play the same trick, I'll play with you. I'll let you see with your own eyes whether you can still bully the Gu Yueqin you used to bully and the Shin Yueji today. Prime Minister's residence late at night, a gentle breeze blew, bringing with it a trace of coolness. Gu Mingqi sat on a soft couch, with two beauties kneading and peeling fruits on each side of him. A scar could be seen on his sinister forehead. His clothes were messy and scattered on his back. His clean chest was as smooth as silk, like the finest jade. Third young master, is the wound on your head serious? You have to be careful, it's almost killing me. The little beauty's soft words were like feathers, tickling Gu Mingqi's heart. He lifted her up easily and made her sit on his thighs. He lifted the hem of the beauty's skirt and entered her. Third young master, please slow down. The woman let out a muffled groan and hugged the man's muscular waist tightly. A lustful sneer appeared on Gu Junqi's devilish face. Little thing, you say you're slow, but do you want me to be faster? With his strength, the woman's body trembled violently. However, Gu Ruoqi did not linger on her body for long. He pulled her hair and threw her off the bed with her body. The woman didn't know what was going on. Her face was still full of lust. Her clothes were messy as she knelt on the ground. Young master, guards. Two servants of the Prime Minister's mansion pushed the door open and entered. Gu Ruoqi didn't even look at the woman who was kneeling on the ground, crying miserably, and said, "This is your reward." The two servants were overjoyed when they heard this, and their eyes were filled with desire. The third young master had very high standards, and every woman's beauty was top-notch. Just like this beauty Lu, she had just been brought back by the third young master not long ago. He had actually gotten tired of this outstanding beauty after only playing with her for a few days. It's good that he got tired of this beauty. Then, they would have a chance. Third young master. Beauty Lu looked at him in disbelief. Chapter 265. Gu Ruoqi did not look at her. His slender fingers lifted the delicate face of the beauty on his left and rubbed it with his fingertips. He smiled coldly and said, "Don't forget to feed my beloved pet after you're done enjoying yourself." Yes. Yes, the two servants excitedly went forward to pull her away. Beauty Lu gripped the bench tightly. She struggled free from the two servants and threw herself at Gu Ruoqi's feet, hugging his thigh as tears streamed down her cheeks. Third young master, what did I do wrong? Did I make you uncomfortable? Don't worry, third young master. I will do my best to serve you. Third young master, please don't give me to a servant. I really like third young master. Third young master. He looked down at the tear-stained face in front of him. She was indeed pitiful. Gu Ruoqi chuckled and unceremoniously kicked her away. I'll let you have some fun before I die. Isn't it a favor for me to treat you? No. No, Beauty Lu wanted to throw herself at him again. Gu Ruoqi's smiling eyes suddenly turned cold. She suddenly stood up and fiercely kicked her in the chest. Beauty Lu was immediately kicked away and vomited a mouthful of blood. Gu Ruoqi brushed off the dust on his luxurious robe and curled his lips coldly. Compared to these two servants of the Prime Minister's residence, how much nobler are you? You're just a bunch of bedwarmers. How dare you ask about my private affairs? If Sheng Guanyu had not spoiled his plans today, he would have already taken that bitch Shen Yueji to his bed. After years of accumulated grievances, he had long hated that fiendish and flamboyant woman to the bone. The best way to take revenge was to take that bitch to his bed and humiliate her. When Gu Yueyin had ordered him to do this, he had been extremely pleased. Leaving the palace was good. He had been longing for this woman for a long time. However, when she entered the palace, he had been angry for a long time and let her escape just like that. Now that she had returned to the residence, he had countless ways to bring her back to him. Today, he finally had the chance to do so. He thought of that bastard Sheng Guanyu. He fiercely punched the coffee table, and the coffee table broke into pieces. The four people in the room were shocked. Blue veins popped out on his smooth forehead. He did not believe that he, Sheng Guanyu, could always be by her side. He knew this woman very well. She was the most restless. If there was a chance tomorrow, she would definitely go out to parade again. Shen Yueji. After spitting out these three words, Gu Ruoqi narrowed his eyes dangerously. Aren't you very capable? Back then in the capital city, you made a fool of me. This debt, I will make you pay double. General's mansion that night, Shen Yueji's sleep was particularly restless. She dreamt that in the secret chamber of the imperial study, she saw the woman in white quietly lying there, helpless, pale and bloodless, that familiar face. It's her, it was actually her. She woke up from her dream with a start. The back of her shirt was wet. The sky was gradually getting brighter. She glanced sideways at the man lying beside her. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and got off the bed. She was really crazy. People often said that what you think about in the day, you dream at night. What expectations did she have for Feng Zhuqing? She actually fantasized that the woman in the secret chamber was her. Thinking about herself, how ridiculous. She put on a coat, glanced sideways at the hazy sky outside, and carefully pushed the door open and walked out. As the door closed, the man on the bed suddenly opened his eyes. His dark eyes were so cold that it seemed like they could freeze. At the same time, it was hard to understand, but at the same time, it felt like there were countless sharp blades slashing across his face. Feng Zhuqing. Chapter 266. Miss, are you up? In the backyard, Shen Yueji saw Shuangxi dozing at the door and walked over. Hearing the sound, Shuangxi opened her eyes. After seeing her, she immediately stood up. Miss, you don't have to worry. Miss Li's body is fine. After clearing the poison in her body, I was worried that her body would not be able to bear it after so many years of torture. So I stayed here to guard her, in case something unexpected happened. It's been a night. I think he should be fine now. Well, I'll go in and see her. You stayed up all night, go back and rest. Yes, Mississippi. Before leaving, Shuangxi kicked Xiaoyu, who had fallen asleep at her feet. Xiaoyu was awakened by her kick and reached out to rub her eyes. Go back to sleep. What's wrong with sleeping here? Imperial concubine, you're here. Seeing Shen Yueji, Xiaoyu suddenly opened her eyes wide and knelt down to salute. Shen Yueji nodded. Well, go back to sleep. I'll take care of your Mississippi, yes, your highness. After entering the room, Shen Yueji saw the woman lying on the bed in the same position as last night, not moving at all. Sighing, she went to the tea table and poured a cup of tea for her. Hearing the sound of the door, Li Yingying looked at her until Shen Yueji walked to the edge of the bed. Li Yingying smiled weakly at her. Your Highness. Your Highness, I won't be in so much pain in the future. Has Miss Li ever fallen in love with anyone? Not understanding why she suddenly asked this, Li Yingying was stunned for a moment and smiled sarcastically. My mother's death is a good example. Men in this world are cruel and unscrupulous. Once they fall in love, they will destroy defenseless women like us. Miss Li seems to be very prejudiced against men, but there's still a long time. You can't judge whether she will have such thoughts in the future. Leaning on the edge of the bed, Shen Yueji sat opposite her. After your mother died, did you still have feelings for your father? Li Yingying pursed her lips tightly. After a long time, she finally spoke in a hoarse voice. Yes, even though mother was tortured by that adulterous couple, she still had deep feelings for Li Yao in the end. Mother's unwillingness after her death still lingers in my mind until now. According to my mother's status, I could have married any man I wanted. Why did I have to marry Li Yao, who has nothing? Other than being able to write poems, talented, and handsome, what else is so good about him? In this world, I can't trust any man who only has a good appearance and is full of talent. Looks like it. In today's world, women regard their husbands as the sky, men have 3 wives and 4 concubines, and beauties embrace each other. How would they understand that women can only rely on one man? Shen Yueji looked tired. Seeing her like this, Li Yingying's eyes flashed. Is there something on your mind, imperial consort? Nothing. Shen Yueji waved her sleeves and stood up. Today, I will bring double happiness to the streets to buy some things. I will also buy you some clothes that fit your body. Apart from clothes, what else do you need? Li Yingying shook her head. On the way to the capital, they have already prepared clothes and some jewelry for me. Hearing this, Shen Yueji laughed. Are they just putting on an act? Or are they really panicking? Are they afraid that you will seek revenge after you gain power? Chapter 267. She said something else to Li Yingying. When she came out of her room, the sky was already bright. Miss, Madam and General asked me to call you to the guest hall for dinner. The servant girl in front of her was as pretty as a flower and as pretty as the moon. Although she was not a peerless beauty, she looked like a pretty daughter of a humble family. What's your name? Miss, my name is Mu He. Mu He. Shen Yueji murmured the 2 words softly. The word he reminded her of an old friend. She smiled. Go to Big Brother's yard and wake him up. Let him go with me. This, Mu He looked troubled. What's wrong? Shen Yueji looked at her. Miss, Mu He frowned. Madam said not to let young master go. She said it would only be a disgrace. In the guest hall, Shen Yueji smelled the aroma of food from afar. Just like last night, Mo Wushang was sitting at the main seat. On his left and right were Shen father and mother Shen, who were busy pouring wine and taking food for him. Looking at the man's cold and gloomy face, he seemed to be in a bad mood. He did not move his bowl or even touch the wine. Shen Yueji sat quietly opposite him and buried her head in her meal. From the moment she arrived, Mo Wushang had already noticed her. Now that she had arrived, she didn't even speak to him. Instead, she just sat there and buried her head in her food. Most importantly, she didn't even put any food in his bowl. He stroked the wine cup in front of him and drank it in one gulp. It was like he was venting. He drank fiercely and fiercely. Shen He was shocked. Son-in-law, I know my father-in-law's wine is fragrant, but don't use so much strength. This wine is too strong. Be careful, don't choke. After hearing Shin He's words, Shin Yueji ate a mouthful of rice and looked up at him. Seeing that the man's gaze was fixed on her, she frowned. Father, don't let him drink too much. It's not good for his health. She complained. The man's tensed face relaxed a little. It's true that a grown girl cannot be kept at home. You are not even married yet and you're already siding with an outsider. But your siding makes me happy. Fine. If you don't want to drink, then don't. Let's eat. Come, son-in-law, I specially asked the chef in the kitchen to make this pork knuckle for you. Great nourishment. Oh, yes, and this bullwhip, but... Father. Shin Yueji's face darkened. She put down her chopsticks heavily. Wasn't this too much? She glared at him fiercely. When she saw the puzzled look on Shin He's face, she took a deep breath and said, "What are you talking about? Why are you messing around?" No, Shin He placed the plate with the bull penis in front of Mo Wushang and said, "Father is doing this for your own good." This bull penis is strong, Mother Shin coughed gently. The Shin father immediately understood, beaming with joy, look at me, I'm really old, my eyesight isn't good. Is thin-skinned, what nonsense am I spouting? Come, son-in-law, let's eat. Don't talk, this plate of treasures is all made for you. You must finish it. He smiled complacently and maliciously. Mo Wushang looked down at the plate of gorgeously decorated things in front of him. His handsome face was tight, and his dark eyes were gloomy. Did he need these things? Chapter 268. This meal made Shin Yueji's scalp tingle. After a few mouthfuls of rice, she couldn't eat anymore. Yet, Shin He was still spouting out a deluge of heavenly flowers. Her face darkened. She walked past Shin father to Mo Wushang and grabbed his hand. Bullwhip is a great supplement, but compared to father, I think that father and mother have a good relationship. Father should need this the most. Hearing this, Mother Shin blushed uncontrollably. She covered her face. Wild girl, what are you talking about? Ha! Shin He was stunned for a moment and laughed. Ask your mother if your father needs this kind of thing. Mother Shin blushed again. Old thing, you can't be serious. You're talking nonsense too. Thinking of the terrifying thing she grabbed that night, Shin Yueji felt uncomfortable. She subconsciously blurted out, "You only know how to come up with bad ideas. It's a great supplement. Do you want the Prince Regent to torture me to death?" She didn't look at the shocked expressions on their faces, nor did she care about the smile in Mo Wushang's eyes. She directly pulled the man away from the seat. Father Shen and Mother Shen were left looking at each other. After a long time, they said, "I told you that the regent doesn't need this. The regent's physique is much stronger than yours." Shen He said disapprovingly, "With the regent's thin arms and legs, his skin is more tender than a woman's. He definitely needs to be nourished. Otherwise, wouldn't my daughter's sexual happiness be wasted for the rest of her life? Moreover, can the regent compare to me? I'm just strengthening his body." Fleeing from the seat, Shin Yueji flung the man's hand away and glared at him angrily. "You're the regent of Phone Country. You're being ridiculed by an official, but you cooperated well and didn't say a word." Knowing that she was really angry, Mo Wushang looked at her and held her in his arms. He said in a muffled voice, "He's your father-in-law." Father-in-law. Shin Yueji was so angry that she laughed. "Since when are you afraid of your father-in-law?" "I'm afraid of Yes, you can only be afraid of me." Shin Yueji gritted her teeth. "Even if he's your father-in-law, you can't be afraid of him." "Yes." The man rubbed her sweet neck and responded gently. "Come, accompany me to the brothel." Grabbing his collar, Shin Yueji turned around to leave the mansion. Mo Wushang obediently followed behind her. His obedient and submissive appearance made him look like a little wolf dog listening to its master. Sitting in the carriage, Mo Wushang thoughtfully peeled an orange for her and probed, "Why did Ji-er go to a brothel? Why do you think I'm going to a brothel? The biggest brothel in the capital is the Drunken Joy House. Most of the people who come here are from influential families in the capital. Of course, I'm here to entertain myself." She opened her mouth and took the orange from the man. But what entered his mouth was a finger. She reacted and hurriedly retreated. A string of sparkling water lines could be seen hanging on the man's slender fingers. Mo Wushang stared at the line of water on his hand. His eyes were filled with gentleness as he slowly placed the line of water on his lips. Mo Wushang. Shin Yueji rushed over to wipe his hands clean, but she was too late. Chapter 269. Beast in Human Clothing. A sanctimonious hypocrite. Shameless. She was ashamed and annoyed, so she kept scolding him angrily. On the other hand, the man's expression didn't change. When she kept scolding him, he held her chin and kissed her. All the curses were blocked back into her stomach. The man held the back of her head and kissed her gently and lingering. Shin Yueji was dizzy from his kiss and soon collapsed in his arms. The man easily pried open her lips and teeth, broke in, and entangled with her. Shin Yueji kept moaning. She was caught off guard when a big hand climbed up her chest. A strange feeling filled her whole body in an instant. She was so scared that she quickly pushed the man away and wiped her mouth fiercely. She stared at him with a vigilant face. "What are you doing?" The man narrowed his black eyes dangerously and imprisoned her in his arms. "Are the rouge and powder in the drunken pleasure house as good as me?" Shin Yueji, his sharp lips brushed past her earlobe. It was ticklish and cold. It made Shin Yueji's body tremble uncontrollably. "Is their taste as good as mine?" Shin Yueji was so angry that she laughed. She poked his face with her fingers. "Yes, those beauties in the drunken pleasure house, whether they are men or women, are not as good as you, Regent. As for the taste..." She deliberately kept him in suspense and pretended to be mysterious. "Everyone has their own taste. Why does Regent think his taste is good?" Seeing the man pressing down on her again, it seemed that he wanted to let her experience it again. Shin Yueji pushed him and panicked. "We're in the carriage. Don't mess around. We'll be there soon." "Ahem. If Miss Shen and Master need time, I can take a few more detours." "Don't panic, we have enough time." Outside the carriage, Ji Chu answered very dutifully. The man blocked her lips as he wished. Their lips and teeth touched, and their tongues intertwined. However, Shin Yueji didn't resist this kind of feeling. She blushed and wanted to avoid the man's kiss, but this kind of action was more like an invitation to the man. Mo Wushang sucked on her lips heavily. His crimson lips brushed past her earlobe and stopped at her pink ear. Love me, okay?" In the hoarse voice, Shin Yueji didn't know if it was an illusion, but there was a trace of pleading in it. This was not like the all-powerful and high and mighty Prince Regent. He was more like an infatuated and helpless man who wanted to get a response from the woman he loved. A gust of wind blew over and lifted a corner of the curtain. Shin Yueji looked over and saw a familiar figure entering the Drunken Joy Inn. It was such a coincidence. She immediately pushed away the man on top of her. "Ji Chu, don't take a detour. Stop in front." "Ji Chu." "Ha." He brandished his whip, and with just one lash, he would be able to bypass the Drunken Joy Pavilion in front of him. Ji Chu wanted to cry, but no tears came out when he felt the cold blade coming from the carriage. This was a difference in treatment. She could be so gentle to the imperial concubine, but so cold to him. Wasn't everyone a little treasure in the past? He resigned to his fate and stopped the carriage in front of the Drunken Joy Pavilion. Master, Miss Shen, we've arrived at the Drunken Joy Pavilion. Shen Yueji jumped out of the carriage first. However, after a while, she found that the person on top had not come down. She glanced at Ji Chu, who had a bitter face. Chapter 270. She jumped into the carriage, took the man's hand, and kissed him on the side of his handsome face. Mo Wushang looked up at her in surprise. There was fire dancing in his dark pupils. I'm doing business, don't be childish. The man stared at her. She looked away awkwardly, covered her lips and coughed, trying to ease the embarrassment. I was kissed and touched by you, and you saw my body. Isn't it special enough for you? She had grown up in her life, except for Feng Juqing. Even Feng Juqing had never been treated so boldly by a man. She said it in a more tactful way, and the man heard her tactful meaning. The tension on his face dissipated a lot, and even the lips that were pressed together slowly loosened. He called her. Ha! You kiss me. You kiss me, and I'll follow you. Mo Wushang, don't be so shameless. Shen Yueji gritted her teeth. This guy. How could he be so ungrateful? The man glanced at her, and his lips were raised happily. For I don't want my face anymore. Sigh. Ji Chu, who was waiting respectfully outside, sighed. He had a deep understanding of his master's words. Ever since he got together with imperial concubine Shen, he had long been shameless. If it weren't for his master's different attitudes towards him, others, and imperial concubine Shen, he would have thought that his master was possessed by a ghost. Every time he wanted to confirm if that spoiled and shameless man was his master would be angered by concubine Shen and vent his anger on the servants. He finally understood the two different attitudes that were like fire and ice. This cold and indifferent man, who could shoot people to death with just a glance, was not his master. That would be a living ghost. Shen Yueji made it clear that she didn't want him to get what he wanted, but she saw the man's attitude of, if you don't kiss me, don't think about staying alone. Even she herself was imprisoned in the carriage, and she couldn't get out even if she wanted to. Shen Yueji held a breath in her heart, held the man's face, and bit his lips hard. Then, like a hot potato, she jumped up from his body. Before she left, she reluctantly turned back to hold his hand. You better be obedient. If you dare to be stubborn and throw a tantrum again, I won't bring you here next time. Ji Chu, Mo Wushang obediently allowed himself to be led out of the carriage by her. He was so obedient and submissive that it was unseemly. Ji Chu, a good room. When they entered the Drunken Joy Pavilion, they saw an old woman greeting them with a big smile on her face. Ji Chu walked in front and threw a big bag of silver at her. Women don't want it, men don't want it either. Don't disturb me. The corner of the old mother's mouth twitched as she looked at the man and woman behind him. She could tell from their clothes that there was a man and a woman behind him. In this day and age, it was really rare for someone to bring a woman to her Drunken Joy house. However, she weighed the big bag of silver in her hand. Just from this big bag of silver, she could tell that the wealth of these people in front of her was definitely not low. She responded with a face full of smiles, "We do have a good room, but it's too little. Seeing how generous the three of you are, no matter what, we have to give you a room. 3 guests, please come in, please come in." Chapter 271. The Drunken Joy brothel was the largest brothel in the capital. There were handsome young men and beautiful girls. It could be said that they had everything one could wish for. While she was looking for Guru Ochi, she suddenly met the eyes of a young man who had just come out of a room. She saw that the man's face was more delicate than a flower, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. His black eyes were like grapes, and his dark red lips were thin and tender. When he saw her staring at him, he didn't forget to throw a coquettish look at Shinyueji. The corner of Shinyueji's mouth twitched. In the next second, under the cold gaze of her master, Ji Chu walked over, carried the man over his shoulder and threw him down from the second floor. Bang! There was a loud noise. The people in the drunken joy brothel jumped in fright. The man screamed as he was thrown down. The old mother was dumbfounded by what she saw. She did not understand. However, the other party had given her a lot of money. She just thought that the man was ugly and did not catch the attention of the three guests. She casually waved her hand and carried the screaming man back to the room. "What are you doing?" Shinyueji followed the old mother into the room. She secretly tugged at his sleeve. Mo Wushang grabbed her hand and said, "Stupid man, shameless." Shinyueji was speechless. Shinyueji stared at him speechlessly for a while. Then, she grabbed his hand and said, "I just let you go for a while and you're already messing around. We are here for serious business. You better behave yourself." The man snorted coldly. The room was beautifully decorated with red silk and a dazzling bed. While it was noble, it also exuded an ambiguous atmosphere. The old mother respectfully led them in. "Three esteemed guests, this is the best room in the Drunken Joy Pavilion. It has been many days since an esteemed guest has visited this room. Oh, I almost forgot. Yesterday, a handsome young master came. Just like the three esteemed guests, he gave me a large ingot of silver. I called Chiu Yen over to serve him, but for some reason, this young master suddenly staggered out halfway through." Sigh. At this point, the old mother sighed. Perhaps he thought of his wife at home and felt that he was letting her down. That's why he left halfway through. In the face of Shinyueji's teasing, the old mother also laughed. "Yes, perhaps Miss Shin is right. It's just that the young masters of the rich and powerful in the capital all have many wives and concubines in their mansions. In my opinion, there's an 80% chance that it won't work. Of course, there are those who have 3 or 4 wives, but there are also many who only have one wife." Shinyueji didn't know why, but when she heard that he had 3 wives and 4 concubines, she was dissatisfied. Especially with Mo Wushang here. The old mother didn't feel that she had said anything wrong at all. If he has one wife, then his wife is as fierce as a tiger. "Young lady, take a look. Those who come to our Drunken Joy brothel for entertainment, don't they also hide it from their wives at home and secretly eat fish here? I've seen all kinds of men, but those who can truly have one wife and not have an affair are pitifully few." Really? She subconsciously thought of the man beside her. Would he cheat on her in the future? She admitted that she was not the most beautiful woman, especially after coming to the Drunken Joy house. She discovered that there were many devastatingly beautiful women above her. If in the future, oh. Dear customer, what are you doing?" The old mother screamed. Without giving her a chance to speak, Ji Chu directly lifted her up and threw her down the stairs. Chapter 272. Shinyueji didn't understand. She looked at him and asked, "What are you doing?" Mo Wushang took her hand, sat on the round chair, and pulled her to sit on his lap. Playing with her fingers, he said with a hint of firmness in his voice, "I only want you. You men only know how to use flowery words to make it sound nice. That's only for you." Shinyueji didn't say anything. The man hugged her, buried his head in her neck, and rubbed it like a puppy. Her knows that I only have feelings for you. Shameless, Shin Yueji blushed when she knew what he was talking about. Beside him, Ji Chu looked up at the sky to see if a bolt of lightning would strike down and strike his master dead. Wasn't his master afraid of being struck by lightning when he lied? Didn't the late empress feel anything? Back then, the former empress accidentally touched it. Who was the one who shook the tent? Ji Chu. Miss Shin, what can I do for you? Just now, the third young master of the Gu family entered the drunken pleasure house. Help me find out which room he went into. Yes. Ji Chu respectfully accepted the order and left decisively. Feeling the man rubbing against her body again, Shin Yueji couldn't help but put a pastry in his mouth. Soon, the man spat it out. Shin Yueji frowned. She rarely saw Mo Wushang spit out what she fed him. Seeing her thoughts, Mo Wushang kissed her little hand. The servants in the brothel will put something in the food and drink of the guests to make it more interesting. He put Shin Yueji's little hand in his mouth and gently bit it. If you feed me this, I won't be able to control myself. His Adam's apple moved. Shin Yueji pulled her finger out of his mouth. There are many good-looking girls in the drunken pleasure house. If you need, I can ask my mother to call 1 or 2 for you. If you think it's too little, 4 or 5 will do. The man kissed her, and his dark eyes were full of smiles. I only want you. No woman in the world can compare with my Shin Yueji placed her small hand on his chest to prevent him from moving further. Mo Wushang, I'm warning you, you better behave yourself. Even if His Majesty and I were just putting on a show, I wouldn't be serious with you. No. The man took her hand into his mouth again. The moist and itchy feeling made Shin Yueji's body stiffen involuntarily, and the back of her ears reddened. This damned guy, how could he be so shameless? You have to be serious with me. Why? Just because you saw me naked and touched me naked. Can you be any more shameless? You have to be responsible for me. You can't abandon me. I saw you naked because you let me. I touched you naked because you forced me to. I didn't do it willingly. Shin Yueji held her forehead. When did touch me willingly? He poured a cup of tea and brought it to Shin Yueji's mouth. Shin Yueji was about to drink it when she suddenly remembered what he said. In order to increase the fun between the guests, the servants in the brothel would put something in the food and drink of the guests. She felt disgusted and guessed what Mo Wushang was thinking. She pushed the tea in front of her away with a look of disgust. You beast, you don't have any good intentions. Take it away from me. Mo Wushang obediently put the teacup on the coffee table. Chapter 273. Shin Yueji covered his mouth ferociously. From now on, you better keep your mouth shut. I won't allow you to say a word. The man kissed her palm, his eyes full of smiles. Shin Yueji glared at him and got up from his lap. She wiped the strange sensation on her palm. Murder! 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 At this moment, there was a commotion downstairs. Shin Yueji pushed open the door and looked down. She saw a naked beauty lying on the ground, covered in blood. Her neck had been cut open, and blood was flowing out continuously. She lay on the ground helplessly, struggling weakly. Her face was pale, and she looked helpless and pitiful. Gu Lingqi, who was dressed in a green robe, was standing on a flight of stairs, coldly looking at the scene in front of him. When he saw the servants of the drunken joy brothel lifting the woman's body for treatment, his sharp eyes were like a blade, staring at the two men, who didn't dare to move. Who dares to save her? Everyone in drunken joy brothel, regardless of whether they were guests or hosts, did not dare to breathe loudly. The man in front of them was the third young master of the Gu family. The Gu family's influence in the capital was like the sun in the sky. Who dared to offend him? If he wanted someone dead, it was just a matter of a single word. The old mother swallowed a mouthful of saliva, her heart aching as she looked at the woman who had lost all signs of life within a short while. Chiao Yu was one of her most beloved girls. She played the zither well and had a delicate appearance. Unlike the other girls in Drunken Joy brothel, she was famous for her beauty. She had helped the old mother get a lot of business in Drunken Joy brothel. The third young master of the Gu family had arrived. She knew that this young master had high standards and was afraid that women who were too beautiful would be vulgar to him. That was why he gave such a good girl, Chiao Yu, to him. She did not expect that not long after she entered, she shook her head and hid the heartache in her eyes. Seeing that Chiao Yu was lifeless, she walked up the stairs and bowed to Gu Ruoqi. What's wrong, third young master? But Chiao Yu's martial arts are not good, so I didn't serve you. Her neck was strangled by a big hand, and in an instant, a suffocating pain assaulted her. The old mother's legs were on the ground, but she didn't dare to struggle. She looked at Gu Ruoqi with a face full of fear. The corner of the young man's mouth curled up into a cold, bloodthirsty smile. Old thing, how dare you arrange for someone who wants to assassinate me to serve this young master? What? The old mother looked at him with difficulty and said. Kill him. Gu Yuanqi was a notorious criminal in the capital. He had killed many people because of his relationship with the Gu family. This was a common thing, so it was normal for him to have enemies. Even the number of people who wanted to kill him was innumerable. However, the men of the Gu family all practiced martial arts. Even if he was a civil official, his martial arts were a cut above the rest. Furthermore, he had secret guards protecting him. Killing him would be harder than ascending to the heavens. Third young master, this. I really don't know. Cough. Gu Ruoqi threw her to the ground. Given a chance to catch her breath, the old mother breathed loudly and covered her neck, which had already turned red. Chapter 274. The old mother flattered, third young master is right, third young master is right. Today is my fault. I didn't control my girls properly, causing them to have evil thoughts. Don't worry, third young master. I've learned my lesson. I promise I won't let something like this happen again. Third young master, I have quite a few beautiful girls here. I feel very sorry for making third young master frightened just now. I'll find a few girls to apologize to third young master. Gu Ruoqi looked down at her and was about to speak. The servant whispered a few words into his ear. His eyes flashed, and he looked sharply at the second floor. He didn't hide his eyes and stared straight at Shin Yueji. Shin Yueji didn't hide and just stared at him. Gu Ruoqi suddenly cracked his lips and smiled. He looked like a fierce tiger that had met its prey. I've already chosen the girls. You don't have to worry about them. Get lost. Yes, the old mother felt as if she had been pardoned. She quickly ordered the servants to clean up the corpses on the floor and leave. This was the third young master of the Gu family. She didn't dare to speak in front of him at all. He could practically kill her. Miss Shen, I've found out about the Gu family's third. Inside the room, Ji Chu bowed respectfully. Shin Yueji waved at him and said, I already know. Ji Chu was shocked and looked up. New. Shin Yueji pointed at the green robe that was about to disappear around the corner. And he has already seen me. If I'm not wrong, he will come to find me later. Miss Shen, because Master had asked him to pay attention to Shin Yueji's matter, he knew about Shin Yueji's private affair with Gu Ruoqi. What are your orders? When he comes in, just help me knock him out and tie him up. Ji Chu was a little excited. He nodded and said, yes. Shin Yueji sat on the round chair and felt a little thirsty. But when she thought of the things in the tea, she put down the teacup and sulked. If not for Mo Wushang in the room, she wouldn't have asked her to endure the thirst. Seeing her gaze on him, Mo Wushang raised his eyebrows. Ji Chu. Master. Go and get a pot of clean tea. Ah. Ji Chu was put in a difficult position, but Miss Shin asked me to stay here and knock Gu Mingqi unconscious. If he left, who would knock him out? Master. He had now subconsciously regarded Shin Yueji as his half-master. Moreover, according to his master's character, Ji Chu had already thoroughly considered whether he should be loyal to Shin Yueji and betray Mo Wushang. Ji Chu still needs to help me with some things. Since you're just sitting there, why don't you go and get me a pot of tea? Mo Wushang looked at her quietly and gently, got up and walked towards the door. Wu Su turned around and asked seriously, is Ji still eating? We still have to eat, but not here. She had already thought of a good place to go. As expected, the moment Mo Wushang left, Gu Ruoqi's light footsteps could be heard at the door. The door opened with a creak. Gu Ruoqi saw the person he had been thinking about day and night sitting on the bed, looking at him with a smile on his face. This bright and beautiful appearance, even his outstanding beauty sister could not compare, let alone these vulgar rouge in the drunken joy house. Chapter 275. When I saw you just now, I thought that my eyes were playing tricks on me. I didn't expect that it was really you. You really haven't changed your temper. You even dare to come to a place like Drunken Joy Brothel. Gu Ruoqi said as he walked in. When he was 3 steps away from Shin Yueji, he suddenly stopped and squinted at her. Why was this woman acting so strange today? Usually, he would look at her coldly or lash her with his whip, but today, she was too quiet and obedient. The most important thing was, why was she smiling at him? Gu Ruoqi narrowed his eyes and looked at her. Shin Yueji, what are you doing now? Shin Yueji changed into a more comfortable position on the bed and smiled at him. What can I do in a place like Drunken Joy Brothel? Third young Master Gu's martial arts are very strong. Could it be that you are afraid of a weak woman like me? Weak woman. Gu Ruoqi didn't know if he was amused by her shameless words. He glanced at her and looked around the room vigilantly. Where is your eldest brother? Eldest brother just came back from Zhongzhou. He has been running around for a few days and is now resting in the residence. Are you worried that he came with me? You 2 siblings are full of evil tricks. None of you are good. If he didn't put Shin Yueji in his eyes, then Shin Yueji was a different story. Gu Ruoqi could count the number of times he had suffered at the hands of the Shin siblings. After confirming that there was no one else in the room besides Shin Yueji, Gu Ruoqi smiled evilly and walked towards the woman on the bed. What? Little slut, after entering the palace, you found that the emperor doesn't care about you. Are you lonely and came to Drunken Joy Brothel to pass the time? Shin Yueji didn't look at him and let him come closer. The man's tall and slender body stood in front of her and looked down at her. She put half of her arm behind her head and looked at him. I met you face to face, but I didn't expect you to come straight into the room to find me. Regardless of whether I am favored or not, I am still the emperor's woman. In terms of status, I am the imperial concubine of Feng country. Third young master, don't you know how to greet me? Oh. When Gu Junqi heard this, he inched closer to her, his warm breath brushing against her neck. But His Majesty has specially decreed that our Gu family doesn't need to pay our respects to the emperor, much less a mere Guifei like you. Hearing this, Shin Yueji suddenly laughed. Her slender, jade-like hands pressed against the man's muscular chest. The man took the opportunity to grab her hand. Her white, smooth and tender jade hand simply made him unable to let go. I heard from Big Brother that on the way back to the capital, they encountered several groups of assassins in black. Was it the third young master's doing? His shrewd eyes flashed and the man leaned over to kiss her. With a sneer, Shen Yueji lifted her leg and kicked his crotch. Gu Yuanqi was already prepared for this. He easily restrained her with his legs. As expected, your fiery temperament hasn't changed at all. You're still as interesting as ever. But this is what's exciting. Now, this young master will let you have a good taste of love. Third young master, now is not the time to talk about sex. Shen Yueji smiled innocently. Although this harmless smile was beautiful, it gave Gu Ruoqi a bad feeling. What do you mean? Realizing something, he suddenly turned his head. Bang! A loud sound rang out. Chapter 276. Shen Yueji brushed off the non-existent dust on her body as the smile on her face turned into a sarcastic one. She glanced at Gu Ruoqi, who had fainted on the ground. Everyone in Drunken Joy Pavilion knows him. Help him change his clothes and cover his face. Let's go. Yes. Ji Chu obeyed and did as he was told. When Mo Wushang pushed the door open and entered, they were already prepared. He calmly walked to Shen Yueji and saw that she was tidying up her makeup. His eyes were dark and there seemed to be something flashing across his eyes. He patiently blew on the tea and brought it to her mouth. Looking at him through the bronze mirror, Shen Yueji obediently took his hand and drank the tea. The Phoenix restaurant opposite is not bad. When I was in the palace, I vaguely heard Double Happiness mention it. How about we go there to eat? The man looked at her with doting eyes and gently wiped the water off the corner of her mouth. As you wish. Gu Ruoqi was woken up by a cup of cold water. He shuddered and looked around. It was a completely unfamiliar illusion and a man and a woman sitting opposite him. He only glanced at the woman, but when his eyes fell on the man, he could not look away. There was fear, and even more shock. The black-robed man with an overbearing aura and a majestic aura was none other than the Feng Nation's regent Mo Wushang. Who else could it be? You, the regent. How could they be together? Previously when he entered the palace, he heard Gu Yuan mention this matter. But at that time, he had a disapproving look on his face. He thought that it was spread by the gossipers in the inner palace. Because he would not believe that a man who hated the eldest daughter of the Shen family for so many years and wanted to kill her with his own hands would suddenly fall in love with this woman. But now, the smell of food filled the table. The familiar smell made Gu Ruoqi realize that he was in the famous Phoenix restaurant in the capital. The most frightening thing was not the fear and timidity that Gu Ruoqi felt towards Mo Wushang, but the fact that this aloof man was peeling a prawn for the little woman in his arms in a meticulous manner. It was obvious that it was his first time doing such a thing. His hands were a little rusty when peeling the prawns. His pair of eyes, which could freeze the world in the past, were now focused on the prawns in his hands. His expression was indescribably serious. After he finally finished peeling a prawn, his ice-cold lips curled into a joyful smile as if he had been relieved of a heavy burden. It gave people the illusion that he was trying to please her as he sent the prawn towards the woman's dark red mouth. Shen Yueji took a bite of the shrimp he peeled and pushed his big hand away. She complained, "You take so long to peel a shrimp. You've peeled one, but I've already eaten 3. The man's tone was gentle as he carefully tried to please her. This is my first time peeling. I will learn it for in the future. Gu Ruoqi stared at the scene in front of him with his mouth agape. He was speechless for a long time. Ji Chu glanced at him and shook his head. The expression on his face was exactly the same as the first time he saw his master serving Shin Yueji. Fortunately, he had already gotten used to it. He put down the pot of cold water and said respectfully, "Miss Shin, Guruochi has woken up." He had completely ignored his loyal dog's master. "You're awake." She took the prawn from the man with her mouth. Chapter 277. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to kiss him. Mo Wuxiang could feel something churning in his heart, as if it was about to burst out of his chest. Even the speed at which he peeled the prawns became faster. Before Shin Yueji could even speak to Guruochi, there was already a small mountain of peeled prawns in front of her. Shin Yueji was speechless. The man moved his handsome face closer to her. His intention was clear. Shin Yueji's mouth twitched. She pinched his waist and said, "Shameless." This man was either slow at peeling prawns or he was trying to take advantage of her. Inexplicably being pinched by her, the man's expression is helpless. His aggrieved expression seemed to be saying, "I really don't know how to peel prawns." Shin Yueji piled up the small mountain of prawns in front of her and put one into the man's mouth. The grievance in the man's heart immediately disappeared. He was satisfied with the prawns that the woman had fed him. Ji Chu could not stand it anymore. He covered his face and reminded her again, "Miss Shin, third young master Gu has been awake for a long time." "Oh." Shin Yueji's gaze moved away from the man and landed on Guruochi, who was in a daze. A gaze as sharp as a glazed knife. Ji Chu turned his back, shivering. "Can't see me, can't see me." Guruochi slowly came back to his senses and realized the situation he was in. His handsome face darkened and he pretended to be calm. "Shin Yueji, what are you trying to do?" "I don't want to do anything. I just want your life." Guruochi's eyes widened in shock when he heard this. "What did you just say? Do you know what you're doing?" Even when Gu Yuan told him many times that she wanted Shin Yueji's life, he didn't kill her time and time again. Originally, he planned to get her on the bed and if she performed well, he would hide her in the dark under some other pretext until he was tired of her. However, he did not expect that their positions would be reversed. She wanted to kill him. Shin Yueji's words made him laugh. Although he was panicking, he still looked as calm as a statue. "Shin Yueji, do you know what you're talking about? Do you know who I am? I am the third young master of the Gu family. If you dare to kill me, not only will father and mother not take it lying down, even his majesty will not let your Shin family off." Shin Yueji smiled. "Third young master, are you stupid? From head to toe, you didn't even show your face. Who in the entire capital city would know that you, Gu Fengqi, were kidnapped by me? You, Gu Junqi, did whatever you wanted in the capital city. You burned, killed, and plundered. You've already made countless enemies. It's only a matter of time before you die. That's because you weren't prepared. My current identity is that of an enemy that you've offended in the capital city. Not the daughter of the Shin family, the emperor's imperial concubine. You, Gu Yuanqi was rendered speechless by her words for a long time. Knowing his current situation, he still had Mo Wuxiang to hold the line. He braced himself and softened his tone of speaking to her. "Shin Guifei, you and I only had some simple small quarrels and do not hold any grudges. Moreover, all these years, it was me who suffered losses because of you and your eldest brother. Have you ever suffered even the slightest bit of loss? If you don't like me, just teach me a lesson." "Why?" Chapter 278. Third young master Gu, is there something wrong with your ears? Didn't I tell you just now that I am just an enemy of the capital who wants to kill you? I have nothing to do with the Shin family. Shin Yueji. Guruochi glared at her fiercely. I don't believe that you dare. If you dare to touch me, I will. Ah! A blood-curdling scream. He felt a sudden pain in his ear and a warm sensation spread from it. Guruochi stared at the bloody ear lying on the ground. His eyes nearly rolled back and he almost fainted on the spot. Ji-Chu poured cold water over him again. He felt a bone-chilling coldness suffocating him. An intense pain spread through his nerves. Guruochi's entire body trembled as he squatted on the ground. He curled up into a ball and screamed miserably. You are not fit to touch me. Mo Wushang narrowed his eyes as he looked at him coldly. His thin lips were cold and he looked like a Rakshasa from the netherworld. No one dared to look at him directly. Especially the black robe and the sharp aura that seemed to look down on everything. Prince Regent, Guruochi covered his empty ear and did not dare to move. He looked at Mo Wushang with fear and dread. He was the one who attacked just now. Only he could do it without anyone noticing. He did not even see his ear being cut off by the wind from his palm. It felt good to have someone protecting her. If someone was rude to her or looked fierce, her man would teach them a lesson for her. Shin Yueji hugged the man's arm obediently and leaned half of her body on his. I heard that Madame Murong likes the food from Phoenix Restaurant. Phoenix Restaurant was the most famous restaurant in the capital. Their dishes were exquisite and every dish was of the highest quality. When Shin Yueji was young, she knew that Murong Yun would come to Phoenix Restaurant for a meal every day. Sometimes, she would even bring the food back to her residence. With her status, she could easily summon the chefs of the Phoenix Restaurant to her mansion, but for some unknown reason, she had to go to great lengths to come in person every time. Once a day, she had her own private room, but it was filled with all the guests of the Phoenix Restaurant. It was as if she had developed a habit of not caring if she could eat them all. Gu Yueqi was startled by Shin Yueji's words. Then, a smile appeared on his face. It was obvious that he had forgotten about the pain of his broken ear. Shin Yueji, my mother will be back soon. If she sees you injuring me, then, is that so? Unfortunately, this consort wants to be seen by her. Shin Yueji got up from Mo Wushang's body and walked in front of him. She looked at him as if she was looking at an ant. The restraints on his body had been formed, but he had lost all of his power. He was just like a cripple, waiting to be trampled upon. Shin Yueji effortlessly picked him up and looked down at the wooden window on the second floor. The streets were bustling with people. Guruochi's eyes darkened. He opened his mouth and was about to shout, but in the next instant, another wave of intense pain shot through his body. Even his right ear had been cut off. The pain from his left ear attacked him again. Now that his right ear had been cut off, Guruochi was in so much pain that he rolled on the ground. Shin Yueji looked at him coldly. He was in so much pain that he couldn't control himself. She curled her lips and smiled coldly. She recalled how he had humiliated and taken advantage of her when they were still in the mansion. Compared to this, it was nothing. Chapter 279. Things had gotten out of hand and Murong Yun and the others had noticed it. When they arrived with their men, they found out that she had shamelessly seduced her own younger brother. Little by little, she had done many things. Shin Yueji had not forgotten about it at all. She wanted the members of the Gu family to die one by one. She wanted them to fall into panic bit by bit and pay the price for what they had done in the past. Third young master, tell me, she moved closer to him and tugged at his messy hair, forcing him to lean against the wooden window. His head almost wanted to crawl out of the window. The man was in so much pain that he was panting heavily. Fresh blood dripped down onto the edge of the bed. Shin Yueji raised her lips and moved closer to him. Her warm breath was something that the man had yearned for many years. Now that his wish had come true, this warm and ambiguous breath made him shiver uncontrollably. His body trembled so violently that he could not even speak clearly. Shen Yueji. I have no enmity with you. Why are you doing this to me? When Madame Murong passes by here, I will slit third young master's neck. When the time comes, blood will spurt from the second floor and splatter onto Madame Murong's body. Tell me, how spectacular would that be? Shen Yueji did not answer his question. Instead, she laughed softly. She would be horrified to see her own son die in front of her. She has the highest status in the world and the most enviable appearance. I wonder how spectacular it would be if her own son's blood dyed her red. The woman's cold and cruel words caused Gu Ruochi's body to tremble even more violently. He knew that this woman was arrogant and despotic, but he did not know that her methods were so cruel. When she had whispered those words into his ear, he could hear the deep hatred and murderous intent in her voice. That kind of hatred was indescribable. However, he did not know how he had offended her to make her hate him so much that she wanted to kill him and torture him at the same time. Third young master, are you afraid? Shen Yueji distanced herself from him and looked at his pale face from the side. She could not tell if it was because of the pain or because of the fear. His trembling body made him seem like a completely different person from the high and mighty third young master of the Gu clan he used to be. Shen Yueji, even if the Gu and Shen families have a grudge against each other, if you want to kill me, you have to give me a reason. Gu Junqi gritted his teeth. Even though he was trying his best to remain calm, he couldn't stop his voice from trembling. Does young Master Gu believe in retribution in this world? Gu Ruochi narrowed his eyes. Shen Yueji leaned close to him, her warm breath on his bloody ear. Do you know how Gu Yueqin was tortured by you all these years, and how she survived until she grew up? When he heard Gu Yueqin's name, Gu Ruochi's body stiffened and he could not utter a single word for a long time. Your Gu clan has been arrogant for so many years, it's time for you to fall. However, you should be glad that you're the first to die. That way, you won't be able to see your Gu clan slowly decline from its peak, slowly being spurned by others, slowly becoming a stray dog, helpless, panicking, terrified, and at a loss. Chapter 280. Madame Murong's carriage was heading towards the Phoenix restaurant. She was dressed in a gorgeous red dress, and even after so many years, she still looked like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Her face was exquisite and she didn't need any makeup to maintain her youthful look. Her head was covered with expensive and gorgeous jewelry, and her red clothes were like fire. Servants carefully supported her from behind. She placed her hand on the maid's hand and stepped down from the carriage in an elegant and dignified manner. The moment he saw Murong Yun's carriage, Gu Ruochi was so agitated that his entire body was trembling. The veins in his limbs had been destroyed and his body was drenched in sweat. There were bloodstains everywhere and he was already struggling at death's door. This was the first time in his life that he had been tortured in such a manner. The pain that was enough to destroy the heavens and destroy the earth was something that he would never forget. He saw his mother dressed in a gorgeous dress being escorted out of the carriage by the servants downstairs. His blood was dripping down the stairs. Is it raining? The wet blood dripped onto the body of the servant who was leading the group. She reached out to wipe the wet stains off her face and raised her head. Her eyes widened in horror. The man on the second floor was covered in blood and his ears were dripping with blood. Only his handsome face was still intact and his arms were dangling from the window as if they were boneless. It seemed as if they were about to fall down. Third young master. Finally, she cried out in fear. Murong Yun raised her head and looked towards the second floor. She saw that there was a long gash on Gu Ruochi's blood-covered neck. The blood that was spurting out was like a broken dam, pouring down like rain. She just stared at it and forgot to react. When the bright red blood started to pour down, everyone was stunned. The passers-by stopped in their tracks and the streets of the capital were completely blocked. Murong-yun stood downstairs as the blood that was pouring down splashed onto her body and dyed her beautiful face red. Her eyes were bloodshot as she glared at the man hanging on the second floor, struggling at death's door. The passers-by screamed in fear. More and more people started to sigh. Murong-yu looked at the man's falling body and subconsciously stretched out her hands. The moment the man fell, she rushed up and hugged him tightly in her arms without caring about her manners. Her body was still warm, but the blood all over her body was shocking and frightening. It was unknown how much blood had flowed from her lithe body. Murong-yun's eyes instantly reddened. She patted Gu Ruochi's unconscious face and said, how are you? Who did this to you? Tell mother. Tell mother. Gu Yueqi reached out his trembling hand and pointed at the second floor with all his might. He opened his mouth and struggled silently. His eyes were as wide as copper bells and he struggled desperately with his last breath. In the end, he did not say anything and died in Murong-yun's arms. Murong-yun called him hoarsely, and her trembling hands kept patting the man's bloodless face. A long bloody wound opened up on his neck, vaguely showing the limb inside. The coldness in his body numbed his limbs. Murong-yun's body was like a broken skeleton, cold and stiff. She carefully held Gu Yueqi in her arms. Her eyes were filled with hatred and cruelty that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Chapter 281. This was the first time Shin Yueji had seen Murong-yun like this. During those years in the Prime Minister's mansion, she was noble and elegant, just like a fairy who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. Even her own daughter had to stop at the sight of her. Looking at her from afar, she couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority. She even felt that it was blasphemy to look at such a fairy-like figure. The crowded street was slowly blocked. She stood at the back of the crowd and looked at Murong-yun's scarlet eyes and ferocious face as she angrily scolded the guards around her for surrounding the huge Phoenix restaurant. Whether it was the hidden guards or the guards she brought, for a moment, the pedestrians and guests of the Phoenix restaurant all looked terrified. She felt a chill in her heart. It turned out that Murong-yun also had a motherly side. It turned out that she also knew that her child was a piece of flesh that had fallen from her body. It turned out that she would also shed tears and get angry at others because of her son's death. It turned out that her frail body seemed to be unable to stand steadily for a moment. The man next to her supported her. She leaned into the man's arms and listened to his strong heartbeat. When she was framed, she did not hesitate to slap herself in front of everyone, saying that she, Murong-yun, could not give birth to such a shameless daughter. She knelt in front of the emperor and begged Feng Juqing to kill her, saying that it was a disgrace to look at such a daughter. Only the heavens knew how much she looked forward to this mother, how much she hoped that she would be able to take a look at her. She didn't know what she had done wrong, what had made her so dissatisfied, so much so that even though they were both children, she still didn't like her. Sometimes she wondered if she was really her biological daughter. It was because her doubts had been confirmed that she was indeed her own flesh and blood that she could not understand why she could be so kind to them, but why was she so cold to her, so disliked and hated her. Soon, the paleness on her face returned to normal, and there was no longer a trace of longing and expectation in her dark eyes. She looked at Murong-yun, who was surrounded by the crowd, and listened to her hysterical cries. The corner of her mouth curled up into a smile. This was just a small gift for the Gu family, a bigger gift was yet to come. It's getting late, we should return to the general's residence. Looking up from the man's arms, Shin Yueji looked at him and suddenly smiled. Mo Wushang's slender fingers caressed her small face that was pretending to be strong. His dark eyes were deep and his long arms held her tightly in his embrace. Have you ever trusted me? Shin Yueji didn't understand why he suddenly asked such a question. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" He kissed her earlobe and said softly, "Believe that Gu's love for you is pure and not mixed with benefits." Have you ever believed me? Shin Yueji didn't say anything. She pursed her lips. Do you believe it? She wasn't against being together with Mo Wushang, but she knew that in the depths of her heart, she was guarded against him. Because in this world, there wasn't a man who would run over to pester another woman after a few days of loving her, telling her that his love for her was real, and that he could give up everything for her, including his life. But at the same time, it was because she trusted Feng Jiuqing's words too much and believed in his deep feelings for her that she ended up being used by him and died tragically. She didn't even protect the two people she cared about the most. Chapter 282. She was afraid. She didn't dare to. When Mo Wushang said that he loved her, said that he liked her, said that he was willing to give up everything for her, she was touched. After calming down, she would ask herself repeatedly, what was worth his sacrifice? For her, Mo Wushang's love for her was inexplicable, without any reason. She bowed her head and didn't speak. The man insisted on letting her speak. He lifted her chin with his cold fingertips. What about the regent? Shin Yueji looked up at him with a rare seriousness in her eyes. Will you lie to me? The man frowned and shook his head firmly. No. Good. She raised her lips and smiled. If the regent doesn't lie to me, I'm willing to treat you sincerely. If you lie to me, you've helped me a lot before. No matter what your purpose is, from now on, we'll never see each other again. Because of the deception, Shin Yueji didn't want to give her heart to someone else again. She didn't want to end up like her predecessor. But she couldn't refuse Mo Wushang's love for her. This kind of love was too deep, more sincere than what Feng Jiuqing gave her. Since this was what he wanted, she could try to accept him. As she said, no matter what his purpose was, this was the only return she could give him. Hearing this, the man's dark eyes were calm after a storm, without a trace of emotion. He finally sighed and got into the carriage with Shin Yueji in his arms. What he wanted, even if it wasn't equal to her love for him, he only hoped that she had him in her heart. What he wanted was her love and her heart. Not a return. As they sat in the carriage and left, a wooden window on the third floor of the Drunken Joy building opened gently. A handsome man's face was revealed. Shang Guanyu's gentle face was a little more dignified. He looked thoughtfully at the direction where Shin Yueji left. Few people knew Mo Wushang's feelings for Gu Yuqin, the eldest daughter of the Gu family. Most of the aristocratic families in the capital knew. But he had seen Mo Wushang's attitude towards Shin Yueji. But just now, his fingertips rotated, and his smooth fingertips turned red, and he felt waves of pain. Is it really you? Why do you give me such a strange feeling now? Thinking of the strange look in her eyes when she looked at him yesterday, Shang Guanyu felt a throbbing pain in his heart. Last night, he stumbled back to the mansion alone from the Drunken Joy building and locked himself in his room to think about many things. Thinking of their past, thinking of how she had bared her fangs and brandished her claws at him. General's mansion coming down from the carriage, Shin Yueji raised her head to look at the big red lanterns hanging high on the door plaque and the red cloth strips on both sides of the door. It was a festive scene. Her mouth twitched as she looked at the man behind her. Did I come to the wrong door? The answer was non-committal. Mo Wushang held her hand and led her into the residence. Xuangxi had been waiting at the door for a long time. When he saw her come in, his face was full of joy. "Miss, you're back." The general heard that Gu Mingqi was killed in the Phoenix house, so he's beating gongs and drums to celebrate. He's even hired people to line up at the Phoenix house to sing and cheer. Shen Yueji's face darkened as she listened to the sounds of him practicing his voice coming from the manor. Chapter 283. She pondered for a moment and said, "Don't make too much noise. There's no need to sing. It's not appropriate to sing anything at the moment. Why don't you ask father to give them some money and bring the celebration to the streets?" Hearing this, Xuangxi's eyes lit up. Miss was so smart. Why didn't she think of this? The third young master of the Gu family had just died. The whole Gu family must be in mourning and wearing white silk. At this time, a few people passing by on the street were playing gongs and drums. It was very festive. Just like this, the Gu family could be angry to death. No matter how powerful they were in the capital, they couldn't stop the young masters from getting married and the girls from getting married, could they? With Shen Yueji's kind reminder, when Xuangxi went to tell Shen He, his eyes immediately lit up and he slapped his thigh to do it. Then, Murong Yun held her son's body in her arms and looked for the suspect in the street angrily. On the other side, groups of people came to greet and marry the bride, playing and playing. Just thinking about it, she could imagine how terrifying Murong Yun's murderous face was. After a tiring day, Shen Yueji returned to her room and fell asleep on the bed. She pillowed the man's shoulder and soon fell asleep. After sleeping for nearly an hour, she opened her eyes and the first thing she saw was the man's dark eyes. She left the man's arm and sat up slowly. She rubbed her eyes and looked out the door. The light in the room was a little dusty. It was obviously late. She got out of bed, walked to the door, opened it, and saw Xuangxi tiptoeing to look inside. As a result, when she opened the door, she almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Miss, you're awake." Xuangxi looked at her eagerly. Glancing at her, Shen Yueji nodded. Xuangxi didn't dare to look inside, but looked at her and pouted. Seeing her like this, Shen Yueji frowned. She followed her to a long corridor and asked, "What's wrong?" "Young Master Shangwan is here." "So be it," Shen Yueji said disapprovingly. "Miss, he came here because of you." Knowing that Miss is resting, young Master Shangwan accompanied the general and madam to talk in the guest hall. Miss has slept for so long, but he did not show any signs of leaving. Moreover, general and madam have the intention to facilitate the marriage between Miss and him, so it's obvious that they can't just ask him to leave. If Miss doesn't go to see him, I'm afraid young Master Shangwan won't leave. These words put Shen Yueji in a difficult position. She turned her head and subconsciously looked towards the room. Double happiness, you know that Mo Wushang is here. He's such a petty person. If I offend him, I won't have a good ending. Compared to offending Shangwan Yu, Shen Yueji was more afraid of offending Mo Wushang. She did not have any feelings for Shangwan Yu, and she had only met him once. However, Mo Wushang was different. He was a man who was involved in both of her bodies. She was also afraid of the regent. Xuangxi whispered in her heart. But what about young Master Shangwan? He was infatuated with Miss, but Miss had never looked him in the eye. Miss, according to young Master Shangwan, if Miss doesn't see him today, he won't leave. Chapter 284. Shen Yueji spread her hands, shrugged indifferently, and yawned. I'm hungry after waking up. Go and prepare some food for me. Shuangshi grabbed her hand. Miss, there is a lot of food in the guest hall, ready-made. Shin Yueji narrowed her eyes. This girl, it was clear that she wanted her to see Shengwan Yu. Forget it. She nodded. Let's go to the main hall. Hearing this, Shuangshi was happy. She finally persuaded the miss, and she could get a lot of money from the general. The general's painstaking teaching was not in vain. Guest hall. Shin Yueji leisurely walked into the room and casually found an empty chair to sit down on. During this time, she didn't look at Father Shin and Mother Shin who were sitting on the high seat. She didn't even look at the man dressed in white sitting opposite her. She picked up a piece of cake and put it in her mouth, and then drank a cup of tea. I heard from Shuangshi that there is food here. Where is it? Seeing her coming, Shin He was stunned at first, and then he laughed and ordered people to quickly bring food to the place where she was sitting. My daughter, you're awake. Yes. Shin Yueji answered absent-mindedly. Look at you. Waited for you for 2 hours, but you didn't get tired of it. You didn't even greet me when you came. Shin Qiu scolded her in a low voice. Her words were gentle, and her expression was full of love, without a trace of anger. Hearing this, Shin Yueji glanced at her, and then looked at the man in white with a gentle smile on his lips. Didn't child Shengwan just come yesterday? Why do you have time to come today? Are you here to visit father and mother? The man smiled slightly. I'm here to visit uncle and aunt, and also to see Ji. It's rare for Ji to go out of the palace, so I want to take Ji around the capital. Yesterday, child Shengwan took me around the capital. Shengwan Yu chuckled. Yesterday doesn't count. Something happened on the way, so I couldn't take Ji to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the capital. It's my fault. I'm familiar with everything in the capital, even if I'm in the palace. Moreover, I haven't been in the palace for long. I wasn't really interested in the things in the capital. No matter how I strolled around, it was still the same. There was nothing to admire. But young Master Shengwan, from your Shengwan mansion to the general's mansion, you must have traveled a lot, right? Shengwan Yu hesitated for a moment and could no longer maintain the gentle smile on his face. Shin Yueji's resistance and dislike towards him were all displayed on her face. She didn't even give him the simplest pretense. I have something to tell you in private. Oh. Shin Yueji's hand that was holding the chopsticks paused. Suddenly, she sent a piece of meat into her mouth as if there was no one else around. She narrowed her eyes and said, What words can't be said in front of father and mother? Uncle, auntie, could you allow you to speak with Ji alone for a moment? Shengwan Yu didn't reply to her. Instead, he got up and respectfully bowed to Father Shin and Mother Shin, who were sitting on the high seat. His expression was so serious, and his appearance was famous for being handsome and gentle. Shen He and Shen Qiu were more or less partial to him in their hearts. Thinking of their daughter's attitude towards him, they sighed in their hearts and got up to leave. After the two of them left, only he and Shin Yueji were left in the large guest hall. It was so quiet that it was a little strange. Chapter 285. She frowned even more deeply. She subconsciously felt that the Shengwan Yu of today and the Shengwan Yu of yesterday were two completely different people. She did not know why, but when his gaze fell on her this time, even if she did not raise her head to look, she could feel his scrutinizing gaze on her. Yesterday's gaze was filled with longing and deep affection. But today, apart from scrutinizing her, even that pair of smiling eyes did not contain much affection. She did not feel this way when she first met him. But now, Shin Yueji realized that this man was not someone who could be easily fooled. She slightly straightened her body, put down her bowl and chopsticks, and lightly took a sip of tea. Father and mother have already gone out. Young Master Shangwan, if you want to say something, just say it directly. There's no need to beat around the bush. Today, I saw what Ji-er did to Gu Ruoqi in the Phoenix house. Saw it? Shen Yueji looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. The second floor of the Phoenix house was personally chosen by Mo Wushang, and no one else could enter. Even if the Gu family wanted to find out who killed Gu Ruoqi, they would not be able to find Mo Wushang. But Sheng Guanyu, he said that he saw it. She did not have any extra expression on her face. She still glanced at him with a smile that was not a smile. So what if I saw it? This kind of method is not like Ji-er's style. Sheng Guanyu looked at her, his smile no longer on his face. Although you are a flamboyant person, you would not use such a cruel method to kill someone. The Gu and Shen families are enemies in the capital, but they would not make such a big fuss in private. Ji had disputes with Gu Ruoqi before, but she only taught him a harsh lesson. She had never thought of taking his life. But this time, from the intense hatred in your eyes, you clearly feel that you are still dissatisfied with how you treated Gu Ruoqi. From what young Master Shangwan said, it seems that you understand me very well. No, I understand Ji-er, not you. Shen Yueji narrowed her eyes dangerously. What do you mean by that? Sheng Guanyu looked straight into her eyes, meticulously not letting go of any trace of panic that flashed across her face. But to his disappointment, from the beginning to the end, Shen Yueji's expression was calm and indifferent. Not to mention panic, there was not even a trace of evasion or surprise. This caused the suspicions that had arisen in his heart to be at a loss for what to do. Why was she so calm? If she really wasn't Shen Yueji as he had guessed, then she should have some expression on her face instead of being so indifferent, as if she hadn't heard what he had said. It was more like he wasn't talking to her. She was just a bystander. You are not Shen Yueji. If I'm not Shen Yueji, then who am I? Gentleman Shangwan, you cannot conclude that I am not the eldest daughter of the Shen family just because my attitude towards you is completely different from before. I know Ji-er's methods aren't that cruel. She may look flamboyant on the surface, but she's actually kind inside. Kind? Shen Yueji sneered. It seems that young Master Shangwan still hasn't learned from the thousands of times I whipped you. Her words caused Shangwan Yu's eyes to freeze and his pupils to contract. She remembered that it was thousands of lashes. Chapter 286. Shen Yueji looked at him and laughed self-deprecatingly. A man who wanted to take advantage of me and take over my body, and Lord Shangwan said that I am kind. Shouldn't I kill him to vent my anger? Or does Lord Shangwan think that my body should be defiled by him for nothing? Even if I knew that he wanted to take advantage of me, should I not lower myself to his level? Should I continue to spare him and give him a chance to ruin me in the future? I don't mean that, you don't mean that. Then what do you mean? Sheng Guanyu, people will grow up eventually. You can think of me as a young and naive person who only knew how to rely on my father and mother's love to do whatever I want in the capital. If I was dissatisfied with someone, I just whipped them. If I was unhappy with someone, I just whipped them. As for the so-called kindness, no one is truly kind. Especially after I entered the palace, a kind person will not live to the end. Sooner or later, the Gu and Shen families will reveal their cards. On the surface, what you see is that they are living in harmony, and only the citizens of the capital talk about the relationship between the Gu and Shen families, but it has never reached the point of fighting. But in private, who knows how many people of the Shen family have already lost their lives to the hands of the Gu family. Many of these things, what you see may not be true, what you hear may not be true, but what really happened is true, no one can doubt it. Looking at his handsome and gentle face, she smiled slightly and walked in front of him. Under his surprised gaze, she took his hand and put it on her face. The smooth touch was what he had longed for many years. In the past, he could only look at her from afar, thinking that even when she was asleep, he did not dare to violate her. Now, his longing for many years had come true. His hand was on her face, feeling the tenderness and softness of her skin. His voice was a little hoarse as he called her softly. Yueji curled her lips and said lightly, "Lord Shangwan, don't you doubt my identity? Then I will give you a chance to prove it. If someone is impersonated, there is no doubt that it is just a mask. Didn't Lord Shangwan hide it well enough? Those people sent by the Gu clan last night, you must have personally gotten rid of them, right? The Gu family's guards are highly skilled in martial arts, but young Master Shangwan didn't even need to exert any effort. From this, it can be seen that young Master Shangwan's martial arts are superior. You should also be able to distinguish the effect of the mask and the real skin on my face, right?" She took his hand and rubbed it against her face. "Young Master Shangwan, why don't you touch it and see for yourself whether my face is real or fake?" In any case, she was reborn into the body of the original owner. Yueji was not afraid that he would be able to guess such an unimaginable thing. Shangwan Yu's eyes were deep and serene. His large palm gently stroked her face. Not to mention a mask, there was not even the slightest flaw. His hands were trembling, and he looked at her with eyes full of pity and guilt. Did young Master Shangwan find anything?" Yueji removed his hand from her face and smiled. She then put her hand on her waist and untied her belt. Shangwan Yu was startled. Yueji took off her coat in front of him. She untied half of her inner coat, revealing her white back, and turned her back to him. Chapter 287. Instead, she showed him the pattern on the back. "Ever since I was born, there has been a pattern on my back. Not many people know about this. If you think that a pattern can be faked, why don't you touch it yourself and see if I drew it or if I carved it on it?" His eyes were filled with endless pain. Shangwan Yu suddenly pulled her to him. He put the coat on her and held her tightly in his arms. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to doubt you. It's just. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I won't do it again. I won't do it again." Yueji didn't push him away and let him hold her. Listening to him talking to himself with guilt, she sighed after a long time. "Now that young Master Shangwan has confirmed it, do you still doubt my identity?" "No, I think the reason why young Master Shangwan came to the general's mansion today and didn't leave for so long is to confirm whether I am the real Yueji or not. Now that young Master Shangwan has confirmed what you wanted to confirm, can you leave now?" Hearing her strange tone, Shangwan Yu knew that he couldn't leave at this moment. If he left, he was afraid that his relationship with would become even more estranged. He used his own strength to make a silent struggle. He hugged Yueji very tightly, so tightly that it seemed like he would never let go. Do you hate me so much in your heart? You said you don't like weak scholars, so I practiced martial arts for you. I want to become stronger so that I can be qualified to stand by your side and protect you. No matter how much I have suffered, no matter how hard it is to practice martial arts, my heart is full of satisfaction when I think of you. Yesterday you left with the Prince Regent. I was very sad. I stumbled around aimlessly in the capital city. At night, I entered the Drunken Joy house. When he mentioned the Drunken Joy house, his tone became a little cautious. He hugged her and whispered into her ear, I originally thought that I would do as you said, have 3 wives and 4 concubines, and casually find a woman to marry. Perhaps we are not suitable for each other. You are already married, and there is no longer any possibility between us. The women of the Drunken Joy Pavilion are all extremely beautiful. Even the woman who served me last night was a rare beauty. However, when her hand touched my body, I felt an unprecedented sense of disgust. I subconsciously thought of you. I hated them all. No matter what kind of beautiful face they had, I only thought of you. I don't have any feelings for them. I don't have any feelings for them. I really can't let you go. I really like you. I can do anything for you, even die. You don't have to respond to me, but don't treat me like a stranger. It will hurt my heart more. I just want to stay by your side as a guardian. I want to watch you from afar and see you happy. This is a kind of satisfaction for me. I don't dare to think about anything else. I only hope, that you won't refuse me such a simple request and satisfy me. Chapter 288. Why do you hate me so much? You don't want to. You don't even want to look at me coldly. I'd rather you be like before, beating me with a whip when you hate me, and yelling at me to get lost when you don't want to see me. I'm willing even if you humiliate me. Don't look at me with such a strange look. My heart hurts. Shin Yueji's head hurt again when she heard the man's hoarse voice. She rubbed her eyebrows and struggled from the man's embrace. She tidied up her messy clothes indifferently. She didn't look at him again from the beginning to the end. Shengguan Yu stopped her when he saw her turn around and leave without saying a word to him. Shin Yueji just stopped and didn't look back at him. Young Master Shengguan, I've said it before. I'm married and the Emperor's woman. If you keep pestering me like this, not only will your Shengguan family be implicated, you will also implicate my Shin family. Don't compare yourself with the regent. His power in Feng country is on par with the Emperor's. What about your Shengguan family? You're a monarch and an official. Besides, your Shengguan family isn't even an official. How can you compare yourself with the regent? Are you really so heartless? Shengguan Yu looked at her with a pained expression. Shin Yueji smiled. I'm not the heartless one. It's you, Shengguan Yu. You always know that I don't have any feelings for you. It's been like this since we were young, when we grew up, and even now. I'm already married, but you're still pestering me. Don't you know why the first daughter of the Gu family, the former empress of Feng country, was executed by the emperor? Shengguan Yu stopped. His face was extremely pale as he stared at her blankly. This time, he did not call out to her again. Instead, he watched as she left resolutely, without the slightest hesitation. He should have known, she was so disgusted and indifferent to him. No matter how hard he tried, she couldn't see any good in him. Even if he took out his heart and showed it to her, she would probably sneer at him with a disapproving face. She would even laugh at his stupidity. Laugh at his lowliness. Shengguan Yu's gentle face instantly turned ferocious and horrible. He clenched his big hand, and his black eyes were filled with intense hatred. Shin Yueji, I've been so good to you, I've dug my heart out for you, I've let you hit me, I've let you humiliate me. For you, I went to learn martial arts. For you, I gave up literature to learn martial arts. I suffered a lot, but every time I think of you, I feel that everything I endured was worth it. Originally, I thought that I wanted to give you a surprise after learning martial arts, but you still didn't take it seriously. In your eyes, you couldn't see my efforts. In your eyes, you felt that my efforts brought you burdens and disgust. Shin Yueji, you don't want to see me. No matter how hard I try, how much I try to make you happy, you will never look up to me. The coldness in his eyes grew colder and more intense. His white robe seemed to be stained with dust, as cold as frost. You forced me to, you forced me to do this. It's all because of you. Why can't you see how good I am to you, how I love you, how I like you? Can't you see my efforts? One day, you will know. You will know that in this world, only I treat you sincerely. You will understand. You will. Chapter 289. Miss, where is young Master Shangwan? She came out of the guest hall. She didn't see Shangwan Yu by her side, so she asked in confusion. Shen Yueji didn't look at her. She walked past her and said, from now on, there is no Shangwan Yu, no matter father or mother. Tell them later that they can see Shangwan Yu, but don't take the liberty to let him come in to see me. There is no possibility between him and me. And before he left, Shangwan Yu's eyes were full of hatred. It was a kind of hatred that he wanted to destroy because he couldn't get what he wanted. She could feel that if she still had some sympathy for Shangwan Yu before, that little bit of sympathy had completely disappeared at this moment. The so-called love, if you can't get it, you destroy it and hurt it. This kind of feeling made her feel disgusted and conflicted. On the way back to her courtyard, she saw the man in black sitting on the soft couch. When he heard her opening the door, he sensed something and looked at her with his dark eyes. It was a pair of black eyes that were filled with vigor. Amidst the loneliness, there was a hint of cleanliness, without any impurities. Shen Yueji suddenly felt that the man in front of her was much more pleasing to the eye. She walked towards him, naturally hugged the man's neck and sat on his lap. You're awake. Mo Wushang didn't say anything. He picked up a pastry and put it next to her mouth. Shen Yueji cooperated and took a small bite. Then, he stuffed the rest of the pastry into his mouth and repeated this process. He ate about 4 or 5 pastries, and he only ate after Shen Yueji had bitten off each bite. Shen Yueji's mouth twitched. You're using me to test the poison. Is sweeter than osmanthus cake. The man put his mouth next to her and kissed her delicate lips. How long have you been awake? I woke up after you left. After I left? She didn't leave for long. Generally speaking, she just went to her parents' place for a meal and chatted with Shangwan Yu for a while. She thought and looked at Mo Wushang. You haven't eaten dong. Brother, have you? What came into view was a man who was tied up from head to toe, his mouth stuffed with food and trying his best to make muffled sounds. Shen Yueji jumped up from Mo Wushang's body in shock. She walked to the front of the bed and looked down at the man who was in a sorry state. She stepped forward and untied him, removing the restraints in his mouth. As soon as he could move, Shen Yueji immediately hugged her slender waist and cried his heart out, Little sister, I thought I would never see you again, sob. He bawled, tears and snot falling like rain. Halfway through his tears, he felt the cold, murderous gaze from the other side. His hands trembled and he immediately let go of Shen Yueji's waist. Shen Yueji saw that he was timid, looking like a bullied wife. She then looked at the man behind her, who was dressed in a noble manner, drinking tea as if nothing had happened. She narrowed her eyes. What's going on? Shen Yueji lowered her head and sobbed softly, not daring to speak. Shen Yueji lifted his chin and looked into his tearful eyes. I'm asking you, what's going on? Do you still want me to stand up for you? Yes. Shen Yueji gritted his teeth and spat out a word. Chapter 290. A sister who was married off was like spilled water. Thinking back to how they were hugging each other so intimately and biting into the pastry, it was as if they could not be more intimate, as if they were about to become one. Ever since he was young, he had never shared a piece of pastry with his little sister. She said that she disliked his saliva for being dirty. Sob, sob, sob. Thinking of this, Shinjuichi burst into tears again. He lay on the bed, covered his head with the brocade quilt, and cried his heart out. Why did she think that his brother's saliva was dirty? That man's wasn't clean either. Sob, sob. With such a brother, Shinjuichi was at her wit's end. She tried to pull the quilt on his head. Shinjuichi grabbed it tightly, as if he was going to choke himself to death. 2 black lines slid down his forehead. Shinjuichi stretched out her leg and kicked him. Come out. Sob, sob, sob. From under the quilt came the man's dying cry. Shinjuichi was completely speechless. She glared at the man behind her who looked as if nothing had happened. She stared at him for a while, then walked in front of him and put her hands on her waist. Mo Wusheng, what did you do to my brother? The man took a sip of tea, raised his dark eyes, and stared at her for a while. There was a flash of grievance in his dark eyes. He looked away, leaving half of his handsome face to her. Shinjuichi's mouth twitched. She walked in front of him and stared at his peerlessly handsome face. Tell me the truth. Look at how badly my brother is crying. Normally, I can't even bear to bully him. Just now, you tied him up and stuffed things into his mouth. Also, there's a bruise on his face. What's going on? He hit me. The 3 words came out of the man's mouth slowly. He hit you. Shinjuichi was stunned. She looked at the man who had stopped crying and was eavesdropping on their conversation. Probably because of her gaze, Shinjuichi rolled onto the bed with both his legs. He was wrapped tightly in the brocade quilt. According to Shinjuichi's style of seeking death, he would definitely do it. In the past, although he was afraid of Mo Wusheng's identity, he had offended Mo Wusheng many times because of her. Now that he knew that Mo Wusheng was with her, he was still thinking of ways to mess with him. However, it was obvious that he didn't manage to deal with Mo Wusheng as he wished. Instead, he was the one who had been outmaneuvered. Shinjuichi felt sorry for him and went to check if he had any wounds. Quick, let me see if he's hurt anywhere. After hearing her words, the man's big hand under the loose and elegant robe saw her face full of worry. His thin lips slightly pursed, and a blood mark appeared on his bright and clean palm. He raised his hand, and the wide sleeves of his robe rolled to his arm, revealing a long blood stain on his white palm. Shinjuichi grabbed his hand and saw the blood flowing out of his palm. Her brows furrowed even deeper. She hurriedly found gauze to wrap the man's hand. Only when the blood stopped flowing did she let out a long sigh of relief. At that moment, her gaze towards Shinjuichi was filled with malice. Shinjuichi was so frightened that his entire body trembled, and he groaned in his heart. Mo Wusheng, you shameless man. He admitted that he had come to find Ji-er. However, when he came in, he didn't see Ji-er, but Mo Wusheng who was lying on the bed. Chapter 291. Who knew that this man would be so vigilant even though he was asleep? Before his fist could land on his face, that pair of eyes that could freeze the heavens and earth suddenly opened. Before his fist could even touch the corner of his clothes, his entire body was sent flying by a powerful internal force. Then, he fell to the ground awkwardly. Before he could get up from the ground, a cold blade was on his neck. What followed was, Ji-chu tied him up and threw him on the bed. During this period, he cried and screamed for help, and then his mouth was gagged, this sinister and despicable man. He didn't even touch a strand of his hair. Who the hell knew how his claw got hurt? It had been so long, and the blood on his palm was obviously from his claw. Ah! Shinjuichi rolled on the bed with the quilt. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. I was the one who was beaten. Why are you blaming me? Ouch! Shin Yueji angrily threw a cup of tea at him, hitting his head. The warm tea dripped down from Shin Yueji's head. Shin Yueji instantly stopped talking. He wiped the tears off his face, got down from the bed, and sat on the round chair opposite Mo Wushang with a serious face. Prince Regent, let's talk. Not understanding what he was up to, Shin Yueji went forward to pull the man's hand. Let's go, don't worry about him. Let's go to the street and watch the show. Mo Wushang got up obediently and let her pull him away. Shin Yueji was speechless. Was he that transparent? No matter how patient he was, he had completely lost his patience after being slighted by his little sister. Shin Yueji strode forward with a gloomy face, blocking their way. Prince Regent, don't you think it's ridiculous that you're hiding behind my sister? Hearing this, Mo Wushang glanced at him faintly and quickly looked away. His indifferent eyes seemed to be calm, but it made Shin Yueji subconsciously shiver. He swallowed hard. When he thought of his little sister not being intimate with him after she got a man, he felt as if there was a knife scratching his heart. His martial arts are above mine. I don't even have the strength to fight back, little sister. Don't believe him. He's lying to you. He was the one who hit me. I know. Shin Yueji raised her eyebrows slightly. What? Hearing her words, Shin Yueji widened her eyes. Little sister knows. Even the tall figure of the man she was protecting behind suddenly stiffened when he heard this. Shin Yueji turns around and pats the man's handsome face. Don't worry, I will protect you, be good. Shin Yueji, his heart started to bubble with jealousy again. Even though his little sister knew about it, she still sided with him. The Prince Regent doesn't want to live in his own mansion and is willing to stay in our general's mansion. He is a guest, not to mention that father and mother have already regarded him as the future master of our general's mansion. Big brother, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to turn a big problem into a small one and a small one into nothing. Think about it. She looked at him with a straight face and said righteously, according to father and mother's protection of the regent, even if he hit you, father and mother still have to worry and ask 1 or 2 questions to prevent the regent from dirtying his hands. If father and mother know that you sneaked into my room today and waited for an opportunity to hurt him, do you know what your end will be? Compared to being jealous of his little sister with a man, Shin Yueji was more afraid of his 2 parents' strange punishment methods. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.